Described as the afterpay of property, a new innovation known as Coposit is poised to change the way that buyers can enter the residential property market. Eliminating the requirement for a traditional 10% deposit, Composite is the brainchild of accounting and property executive Chris Ferris. He joins us today to talk through his business. Thanks for joining us on The Urban Developer.
Thank you very much, Adam. Really appreciate the kind introduction. Thank you.
Now let's start with the product itself. What exactly is Composite and how does it work?
Composite goes down to break down that very first barrier that home buyers usually face when they're trying to enter the market. You know, so often we talk about housing affordability, but really the first barrier is that deposit. And it's such a hard product to actually get to. So Composite actually aims to simplify that process, and we allow people to secure a property with a $10,000 deposit, and they pay the balance of that deposit in weekly installments, which we actually call Composites, over the life of the construction period, over the duration of the construction. So it's quite a revolutionary product and really been an interesting uptake within the market.
And so how did the idea for this form, and I guess how did you technically overcome the problem of raising a deposit? Just take us through that.
Look, the idea actually came from, so my background is former in development, property development for the better part of 10 years. We had a rental property at the time that we were looking to rent out to a family. They were, husband and wife. The wife was just getting back into work. He was earning a good income of 150,000 per annum, and she was getting back into work at about 50,000 per annum. And we said, look, we're happy to accept your rental application, but we want to know why you aren't buying. You've got good income, and what's the issue? And they just said, look, we just can't get to that savings deposit. Every time we do, the barrier moves and the goalpost changes, and now we look at it, it's a 6-year period to actually save for that 10% deposit. So we actually worked with them and helped them get into our next stage in our development. And it actually worked where they were paying monthly repayments, and we got to the end and they had accumulated a full 10% deposit, and they actually settled on the property, and they were able to get into property. And without that method, this was before Composite was even thought of, but without that method, it wasn't possible for them to get into property. But we saw it firsthand, it worked. And for me, it was quite an emotional moment, because I've got young kids and I sort of see where the market's going, and I just wonder how they're going to get into the market. And this is what we really tried to break that barrier down, and it's only becoming harder and harder. And then I suppose we came up with the idea of Composite.
How does it actually work from a funding point of view? Who's effectively advancing the loan to the borrower?
Yeah, so there's no actual loan in place. So what happens is usually you would pay, you'd take 4 to 6 years to save for your deposit. You would pay your deposit on exchange, a 10% deposit. It sits in a trust account for the duration of the construction period. And then at settlement, those funds would get released to developer if they complete. What we're actually doing is we're saying that there's a better way to do it, which is allowing the period of construction to actually allow purchasers to save for that deposit. So they're exchanging on a minimum of $10,000. And then during that construction period, they're paying weekly payments to get to that 10%. And we schedule those payments so they're always 3 months before completion, which is really quite important at the end from a finance point of view. We want to make sure that they've got plenty of time at the end to get their finance, which we actually also help with them with get that goal. So it's really quite important that we're not actually advancing any funding. We're actually changing the way property is being purchased. And we like to throw that revolutionary word around, but we do believe that once we launch Composite officially next month, that this is going to be the way that we buy property. And we anticipate that you're going to have people walking into showrooms and display suites saying, is Composite available? And if not, that may be a key decision maker to them actually going ahead with a purchase or not.
Very much related to off the plan property then. From a developer's perspective, what changes from a risk point of view? Does it change at all? Is it an unconditional contract? And I guess who guarantees the completion?
Yes, so it's obviously an unconditional contract. In terms of the completion, we go back to what it is now. So we've challenged the way, and from a financier point of view, we've obviously been speaking with multiple financiers. We challenge what is, I suppose, a qualifying sale. So traditionally, a qualifying sale is viewed as, you pay your 10% deposit, they're financially qualified. And then, a lot of the time we don't hear from that client until, you give them your OC and your registration and notice to settle, and they're settling. But as my experience in developer, that to me is not a qualified sale. And we want client engagement, which is really quite important throughout the process of the development. We want to be speaking to our buyers on a regular basis. The weekly payments actually go towards qualifying them further. So if you get to the end of the Composite program and you've paid your deposit in a weekly payment, you're actually demonstrating your future ability to service a mortgage. So the bank views that favorably when you're going to actually get your mortgage at the end. And then we also look at what it is now. So people put 10% down. If they can't get to the end of that settlement period and they can't settle, it's the same scenario. So we're still making sure that people get to that 10% deposit, which is really quite important. And I suppose, you've seen a lot of government programs now, the 2% deposit scheme for single parents, and you've got the 5% deposit scheme, which was a really big take up to, avoid paying the LMI or the government guaranteeing the 15% balance. I think that's an admission that there is a problem with the 10%. And, those schemes are fantastic to help people get in, but I think it's important to have as much equity as possible, as to try and get into the property market. It's really important.
And so from your experiences, are the banks recognising these sales as qualifying pre-sales from a pre-sale funding perspective?
Yeah, so look, in terms of our first project that we piloted Coposit on, Civic Properties had a 97 apartment development. We used Coposit for 100% of the sales. So during that period, the breakup of it was 22% went with the traditional 10% deposit, again, through the Coposit app. So we've got that system functionality. 23%, which is really the number that gets me, 23% of actually saying that we couldn't have purchased without Composite. So they've had the door slammed in their face. They can't get into the market. And then I suppose we had 55%, which to me was a really good story too, where they would prefer to purchase property via Composite. Now, what that meant is we had, for example, two clients. One client was a banker that actually worked at HSBC, who was buying an investment property. He had a great income of, I think, 240,000 at the time. And he just couldn't get to that saving point. But he saw Composite really fitting into his lifestyle. So he's now getting into property that way. And then on the flip side, so that was the investor story. And then on the flip side, we had a young lady called Tanya, who had first home buyer. She had the 10%. But she looked at Composite and said, look, I'll commit to Composite, exchange on 10,000, get to the end of it, have a full 10% deposit. And then plus my original 10%, I've now got a 20% deposit. So we're actually going to make quite a few buyers stronger, categorically stronger buyers towards the end. And we're also introducing a whole new market. You've got your first home buyers, you've got your investors, you've got your downsizers, upgraders. We've got a new market called Copositors that we're creating effectively. And, the data, for example, suggesting it's 23% a new market. So it's supercharging sales.
So what's been the take up then, Chris, in terms of other developments? Where is Coposit on its journey?
We're obviously in the startup stage. So, we're speaking really early, and we're launching in October with the view of getting quite a few developers on board come November. We usually see a drop in listings, I suppose, traditionally with developers in November and December, leading into, launches coming up in February, March. But we're gearing up for, I suppose, with lockdowns and whatnot, less people going away and gearing up for that property market that's coming back online. So we've got quite a few of the top developers in Australia that are looking to come on. And, that's actually driving, our expansion, I suppose. So we're looking at a New South Wales-based launch at this stage with the further Eastern Seaboard expansion. And that's really driven by client demand. We're speaking to some high-end New South Wales developers, and they say, look, I've got a project in Victoria, for example. So they're asking us about that aspect. So that's really driving our growth story.
And I guess how big's the opportunity from your point of view? How much take up do you think there is within the industry for something like this?
My opinion is we're potentially going to create a movement, and the movement is a better way to buy property from a client's perspective. And what's really important is the uptake from developer aspect. It's providing so many benefits for developers, particularly with the second arm of Coposit, which is the tools and the sales and management tools that we've built in, not just for developers, but for real estate agents and project marketers who play a massive role in Coposit. And then you've got the wave of consumers and clients behind us that really want to buy property this way. So in terms of the uptake, we are speaking to quite a few well-renowned brands and developers that are looking to come on and really quite excited about the opportunity. And I think even some of them see it as a social responsibility to be able to assist the market with so many buyers that have been shut out to date. And I think, especially with where the market's moved in the last 9 months, it's been a quite a wild journey, and I think prices have gone quite crazy, and people are seeing that, and it's again moving the goalpost even further away for people that are trying to get into the market. You see stories all the time, even on Urban Developer, for example, where people have got 100 grand saved and they're still priced out of the market. You know, it's quite concerning to see that, and you want to try and help them get in.
Well, mate, we wish you all the very, very best. We love seeing innovation in the industry, and this is certainly one of them. So all the very best.
It's a pleasure, Adam. Thank you very much.
Cheers.